Hey everyone, my name's Gundam. You might also know me as Loser Incarnate on Twitter, and I can get into an in-depth introduction of who I am and what I want to do with this channel, but you're likely here for a model kit review, so I'll save all of the boring details for afterwards. Today we're going to be looking at the 1/144th scale high-grade Universal Century Zaku II Type C and Type C5 from Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. Released in 2017 and retailing for 1,980 yen. Since I haven't built any of the other Origin kits, I can't exactly say how this will compare to other Origin Zakus, but from what I recall, the contents are basically identical to the C6R6 variants with the exception of a few alternate parts. So let's dive right in and see what's inside the box, shall we? But first, a look at what's on the box. You get some nice shots of the completed build all painted up, as well as some blurbs about the anime and Mobile Suit in English. I won't get into that stuff myself, so feel free to pause at any time. The kit contains 11 runners and consists of 7 different colors. You get 2 shades of green, a blue-green, 3 shades of grey, and a pure black. It uses polystyrene plastic for all of the parts besides the polycaps, with 2 of the runners being in a softer polystyrene material. So good news for anyone that likes painting their kits. And as alluded to just now, the build does include a set of polycaps. As well as that, you get a pretty modest sticker sheet. And of course, we can't forget the manual. You get some more info on the mobile suit, photos of the 2 variants, and as with the box, the instructions are likewise in English, making it more accessible to beginners. And here's how the kit will look when it's all assembled, along with a preview of everything that comes with it, which is quite a lot. I decided to build the C5 variant, and I'll talk more about the C parts in just a bit, but as the kit is spinning around, let me just take a brief moment to explain my review process. I'll basically be evaluating the kit in 5 different, though somewhat overlapping categories. The build, aesthetics, presentation, accessories and extras, and articulation. I'll be grading each category with a letter score of A through F, though to spice things up a bit, I won't be handing out grades until the end of the review. So without further delay, let's get into category 1, the build. If you built HG kits before, then this is probably going to be pretty straightforward. It's your standard affair of joints sandwiched between plastic armor pieces with polycap connections. The only thing to kinda watch out for is the piping, which feel like they can potentially snap if you're not careful bending them in the correct position, and they can be a little tricky to align when putting on the connection piece. There's also the foot, which you can mistake for having a bend, though there's a joint that actually takes a little pressure to insert, and once it's in, you can no longer bend the foot. Overall, it's a very simple, beginner-friendly build, but not by any means boring, as it doesn't take long to get a finished mobile suit that holds together really well. So here's where a bit of my bias comes into play, and luckily they're all in favor with the design choices made in this kit. First, let's get back to the option parts. Once again, I decided to build the C5 variant, and basically the only differences that come with the C-type are the chest pieces without the Vulcans on the front, and a more traditional Zaku cockpit hatch. Slightly different piping armor, and instead of the twin machine gun, you get this cover piece for the attachment point so it looks the same as the right arm. There's also this alternate backpack, and I can't find in the manual if it specifies which variant is which, but unfortunately this one doesn't come with a connection point to store the bazooka, so it's definitely the more restrictive choice. You might also notice it's missing a vernier, which I left on the runner, and that's because you only get enough polycaps for 3 of them, meaning unless you have a spare, you basically have to choose one or the other. Old Bandai's way of making you buy another kit, but honestly with these options I can't really complain. Onto the out-of-box looks, I have to say I'm impressed. I haven't done any additional work to it besides a straight build, and if I wasn't familiar with it, I'd almost be convinced it was one of Bandai's more expensive robot figures. There's a lot of nice surface details and panel lines just about everywhere you look, but not so much that it feels busy. It has a very industrial design language that really accentuates the real robot quality of the mobile suit. On top of that, I really like the 2 shades of green used here. They're not quite as light as the greens used in the promo image, but I'm okay with that because the darker tone makes it feel more akin to a serious military machine. The plastic also has this nice, sort of glossy finish, which doesn't look all that toyish in person. If there's just one minor complaint I have, it's that from the front the arms look a little gappy, somewhat breaking the realism. I guess that's to give the arms a little bit more range of motion, and from the sides it can give the illusion of the Zaku having a bit more bulk. That is, if you prefer your Zaku's extra chonky. The Origin Zaku definitely got the looks, so how successfully does it achieve them? Starting off with the stickers, the only mandatory one is for the mono eye, and you get a choice between this typical bright pink one and the one I currently have, which has a faded look. I kinda wish I went with the other because it's a little hard to make out, but it's not too bad. Anyways, the absence of color correcting stickers is a big plus. There's not much to compromise on with the simple colors of a Zeon suit. Sure, it'd be nice to get color apps for smaller details like the gray for the muzzle section, the barrels on the twin machine gun, and these thrusters on the leg. But for high-grade standards, this is more than satisfactory. As for nub marks, they're not much of an issue for the most part since the gates were pretty small, and a lot of them are in spots you might not even notice. However, there are areas that require a bit more care, like the feet, which have more prominent marks due to the darker plastic, the back of the leg joints, the shield, and the forearms, which have this seam running down them. Speaking of which, let's move on to the seam lines, and yikes, that's a pretty nasty seam. You're probably gonna want to seal that. Luckily, I'd say that's the worst of it. There's another one down the center of the shoulder armor, but it's not all that apparent. The ones on the shoulders themselves are pretty well hidden. On the sides of the lower legs, there seems to be an attempt to design around them, but they still might not be the most pleasant to look at, whereas the thighs do an excellent job incorporating them into a panel line detail. Due to the option parts, you get a line going down the sides of the chest, but seeing as they line up with the details on the side skirt, one could see that as just a design choice. Lastly, the head is separated into two pieces, and also worked into a kind of a panel line detail. So minor imperfections aside, Bandai didn't cut many corners making this kit look as good as it does. Moving on to the accessories and extras, starting off with the hand parts. Besides the block style holding hands currently on the mobile suit, you get one right trigger finger hand at a bit of an angle to help with shooting poses, and a widespread left hand. And I'm a little embarrassed to report that one of the pegs that connects the other half of the trigger finger hand actually snapped when I was taking it apart. It's strange because I usually exercise caution and I never had something like this happen before, so it could just be a defect with my kit. All I can say is just be extra careful. Having said that, the hand still holds weapons pretty fine. Next up, the weapons. You get a standard Zaku machine gun, which looks pretty cool. Just two parts sandwiched together with some simple details to give it a little bit of depth. There is this nub mark on the back of the stock, which is a little annoying to deal with since it's on a curved surface, but you likely won't look at that side much, so it's not really an issue. Same goes for the hollow side of the drum mag. It's our little secret. For moving parts, the grip can swing left and right, and the sight can move up and down on the left side, but stops a little more than halfway to the right side where the rifle can come apart at the seam. It attaches to the right hand like so, and can be held in one hand with no trouble. You also get a spare drum magazine which can plug into the back skirt, but the connection isn't very secure, so into the ziplock it goes. Maybe reloading isn't your cup of tea. Well, fret not, that's where the belt-fed machine gun comes in. It's mostly identical to the standard machine gun, right down to the build. The obvious differences are that it no longer has the drum mag, and instead opts for this feed system with a flexible ammo belt that attaches right onto the main grip. For whatever reason, there's not as much detail as on the other machine gun, and the sight can actually flip left to right unobstructed. To use the weapon, you just plug the ammo pack into the bottom of the backpack, and place the rifle in the trigger finger hand the same way you would with the previous one. Simple as. Continuing on, you get a bazooka that looks okay, fairly minimal in terms of detail, but for a weapon like this, maybe there doesn't need to be a whole lot. Once again, two pieces and you got quite a noticeable seam going down the middle. You also need to do some nub cleanup on the breech section here, and I'm not sure why, but there's a pretty nasty scuff mark too. Maybe it has to do with the molding, or it could just be an issue with my kit. You also get a sticker for the sight, but I decided not to use it because they tend to look awkward on round surfaces. The sight moves up and down that much. The grip can swing left to right, and the handle can move back and forth nicely, making it easier to achieve your desired pose. You can also remove the missile ammo, and you get 2 more containers, which can attach onto the shield if you wish to do so. The bazooka then can fit into the hand like so, and hold it well one-handed, since it's long enough in the back to use the shoulder as support. When not in use, you get a clip that attaches to the bazooka at this point, and to store it you can plug it on either side of the backpack, but only this specific backpack. But screw all of those weapons, we all know the real reason to get this kit. The ASR-78 Anti-Spaceship Rifle, aka Big Ass Sniper. This has to be one of, if not the coolest weapons I've seen in an HG kit. It might be that I love snipers in general, they're usually my go-to weapon of choice in shooters, but the mold on this thing is just fantastic. And look at the size, it definitely makes a statement. As with other weapons, it's 2 pieces sandwiched together, with the seam partially hidden. No moving parts, this ammo cartridge is sadly just molded in, but that's okay. You get a sticker for the sight, and it doesn't look so great, so you can see why I didn't use one for the bazooka. Equipping the rifle is the same familiar process. Just fit it in nice and secure, and place the other half of the fingers on top, just like this. And how well does the Zaku hold this bad boy one-handed? Well, not the best. Because it's so damn front heavy, it's difficult to get it to stay upright. Guess it has
too much high power there.
But that's where the wide spread open hand definitely comes in handy. And with a little fiddling around, you can get a pretty good shooting pose out of it. Rounding off the weapons, you get 2 heat hawks. Sort of. One of them is activated, and the other is deactivated, with a peg on the side to plug on the side skirt. Not much to say here. They look fine and come as just one piece. You can equip them in either holding hand by taking them apart, but I'm lazy and I just sort of push it in so the fingers grab onto the little crevice, then squeeze them back together for a firmer grip. The deactivated heat hawk can then be plugged into either side skirt. For extras, not counting the C parts since I already covered those, you get some sticker style decals, and I decided not to use any of them just to focus on the kit itself. But they're there if you want to customize your Zaku a little more. You get a base adapter that's compatible with Action Base 2 in case you want to do some cool aerial poses. Last but not least, there's an alternate headpiece with a commander style fin. I hadn't mentioned it before because they're labeled as extra parts in the manual. You just remove the standard headpiece and push it on the same way as the other. It's a cool addition if you want to build a Zaku army and differentiate between your units. Oh, and one more thing. You can actually move the mono eye left and right by turning the switch beneath the head. A feature that comes with most mono eye kits. I just think it's neat. Finally, the articulation. And let me just say, this is perhaps some of the most fun I've had posing a model kit. For a grunt suit, this thing can dominate most poses. Going from the top, the head can rotate all the way around, and since it sits on a hinged double ball joint, you can move the head back and forth. In a neutral position, you don't get much vertical movement, but because of that double joint, you're able to pull the head out and look up and down pretty well, only hindered somewhat by the bulky design. For the torso, there's hinges inside the chest that let you move these side armor pieces in and out slightly. It doesn't really enhance the posability, but the extra moving parts do add to the authenticity. The upper body is connected to the waist section via a double ball joint that offers a great range of movement. You can rotate it all the way around. If you pull the torso out, you can get a nice crunch forward, some pretty decent movement towards the back, and even some side to side. This causes a little gapping in the torso, so what you can do is push it back down to lock it in place. However, it does limit the upper body movement. I'll add that, as solid as the kit is, it comes apart at the waist pretty often, resulting in a bit of floppiness, but the polycaps have just enough grip that nothing feels like it's going to come loose. As for the back, the thruster bells move on polycap ball joints. The arms are on ball joints, meaning they can do a full 360. Another aspect I love is that the polycap functions as a hinge mechanism that allows you to swing the arms out to the front for a more dynamic range of motion. Excellent for shooting poses. The shoulders also have hinges that make up for some of the lateral arm movement you'd lose because of the ball joint. On the left side, the shoulder armor does get in the way, but you can move it somewhat to raise the arm almost parallel to the ground, whereas the shield on the right shoulder is connected to a hinge on a ball joint, letting you get it out of the way for a raise that's about 90 degrees. Unobstructed bicep swivel. bend at the elbow at 2 joints. Another look from the back. Hands are on ball joints with surprisingly no polycaps, just a firm plastic on plastic connection. Maybe a bit too firm, but that's just me. I'll show you what the skirting armor can do along with the leg articulation, just to stick to the relevant details. The leg is connected to the hips via a peg that inserts into a polycap. The legs can go up that far before the knee armor runs into the front skirt, which is nicely separated, but you can get it out of the way for a magnificent higher than 90 degrees. What's more, there's a swinging mechanism that lets you bring the legs back and forth to help you squeeze a bit more range out of them. The rear skirt is just a solid piece, so that's the best you're gonna get towards the back. As for the side skirts, they peg into a polycap ball, so you get a little bit of movement. They can come loose if you push them out too much, but fortunately the legs are low enough that you can pull off the splits no problem. Thigh swivel, solid double jointed bend at the knee, revealing some cool frame details. The piping doesn't get in the way at all, though I would keep it pushed in when bending the knee because it can occasionally pop out. And lastly, the feet. They're a solid block, so your range is going to be a bit limited, especially factoring in the bulky leg armor. There's a hinge joint that can let you go forward about that much, so not bad. However, no movement out to the back besides a slight downward bend. You get some ankle pivot, which is restricted by the armor design, but honestly, it's not the worst. So all in all, the articulation for this kit is impressive. It's got all the essentials covered and more. Now that I've taken just about everything into account, it's time to grade this bad boy. I'm giving the build an A. It's a quick and simple build that doesn't feel at all tedious. If you're just getting into the hobby, I can see this as a great first kit. The aesthetics get an A. I love the more industrialized look of the Origin Zaku, and I appreciate the option to choose between the C and C5 parts to customize the kit to your liking. Presentation gets an A. Having only one necessary sticker goes huge in its favor, and whatever shortcomings the kit has visually is not enough to take away from its good looks. The accessories and extras are an easy A without a doubt. Honestly, the anti-ship rifle is probably awesome enough on its own to warrant that grade, so the fact that it packs in so much more is enough to make any Mono Eye fan happy. And to top it all off, I'm giving the articulation an A. This thing is a posing beast, and while it's certainly limited in a few areas, it's not held back in the places that really count. You'll have fun getting this kit in all sorts of wild poses. Adding all those scores together, it stands to reason that the final grade for the HG Origin Zaku would be an A. But if you ask me, that really isn't necessary. Instead, what I want you to get out of this review is to think about the aspects of a kit that matter to you, and decide if any one or more of them is enough to convince you into getting the kit or not. With the criticisms I mentioned throughout the video, it might seem like I'm handing out A's too generously, and I'll hopefully elaborate more on my scoring system in a later vid. Before 2017 HG standards, and even current, you'd have to be an even bigger critic than me to find any kit-breaking faults with it. So with all that said, that's the end of the review. I hope you found it to be helpful, and maybe you'll check back in for the next upload, whenever that comes. This is Gundam May Cry, signing out. Is it me, or is this chair setup a bit awkward? I feel like it might look just a little bit awkward. Like, I'm the leader of some sort of criminal organization, but not really like the cool kind, just the lame kind. But I feel like standing up would also look a little weird because, I don't know, like, it just has, like, there's just less going on. But in any case, if you stuck around to the end, I just wanted to thank y'all for watching my first video. I'm just doing this little outro segment because I want to get more experience recording myself, since it's not something I'm particularly good at. And as you might notice just now, I'm probably going to rely on a lot of jump cuts because I have the tendency to just kind of stop in between my sentences and sort of collect my thoughts, or just kind of like, just kind of stumble on my words. I do apologize if this video seems a little bloated. I spend a lot of time just trying to establish the way I want to do things, and hopefully in the next uploads it'll go by a lot faster. As for what I want to do with this channel, as I mentioned in the intro, what I want to do is basically just like Gundam model kit reviews, as well as like just cover Gundam related content. I might just branch off and do some more like otaku and other anime related content, but for right now, like, I like Gundam model kits and I want to focus on that. So if you're into that kind of content, then I guess that's what I'm here for. I'm not going to add any plugs to the end of this video, because there's no telling when the next upload will be. But if you want more content from me, you can follow my Twitter via the link below. It's Loser Incarnate, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and likewise I do talk a lot about just like Gundam and Gunpla related content, but there's also a lot of just random anime, art, and other kind of shitposty stuff, as well as politics, so if you're not really into that kind of stuff, I totally get it. With all that said, I hope you look forward to my next upload, whenever that will be. Once again, this is Loser Incarnate. No, excuse me. Once again, this is Gundam May Cry, signing out.